In the 16th century, the Ottoman slave trade moved an estimated 3 million people out of Eastern Europe in a single century. Most of them disappeared from history entirely. One did not. You are not her yet. You are just a girl in Rohatyn with mud on your shoes. You are 15 years old, and you know exactly how many steps it takes to walk from your house to the well. 43 in dry weather. 46 in mud, because you have to go around the low place near the fence where your brother broke his ankle 2 winters ago, and the ground never drained properly after that. You know this, the way you know everything about Rohatyn. Not because you thought to learn it, but because you have walked it enough times that your body learned it without asking your permission. Your father is a priest of the Orthodox Church. His name is Havrilo. He is not a large man, but his voice is large, the kind of voice that fills the nave on Sunday mornings and makes the candle flames move with the resonance of the low notes in the liturgy. You grew up thinking that was what God sounded like, a voice that moved flames. On the days your father is not reading from the Menayan or singing the Tropariya, he speaks quietly, in the ordinary register of a man who has used his voice for something important and is resting it for the next time. Your mother is named Tetiana. She does not rest her voice. She uses it the way she uses everything in the house, efficiently, without waste, in service of getting through the day and into the next one. The house has 2 rooms. In the first room, there is a table, a hearth, and 3 icons your father brought from Kiev before you were born. In the second room, there are 2 beds and a chest your grandmother left behind when she died. The chest smells of cedar and dried chamomile, and something else that has no name, a smell that belongs only to the chest and to the people who owned it before you. You sleep in the second room with your younger brother, Mikola, who is 11, and has been memorizing the wrong verse of the Psalter for 3 days and will not be told he has it wrong. At night in winter, you can hear the river from the bed. In spring, the river is louder, and you cannot tell whether it is the water or the frogs. Mikola says it is the frogs. You say it is the water. This argument is 5 years old, and neither of you will win it. It is late April. The mud has finally dried enough to walk to the well without losing a shoe. The sky this morning is the pale blue of early spring, the particular blue that comes before the leaves are fully out, when the branches are still bare enough to show the colour behind them. You have seen this sky every April of your life, and it is still the most precise colour you know. Your father has already spoken to a man in the village of Drohobych about a possible arrangement. You know this because your mother told your aunt, and your mother does not know that sound carries through the wall between the 2 rooms when everyone believes the children are asleep. The man in Drohobych is a miller. He has a son who is 19 and reportedly not cruel. Not cruel is the highest recommendation your mother's voice gave him, and you have been thinking about those 2 words since November. Not cruel. You know what a village of 400 people looks like from every angle. You know the names of every family, which dogs bite, which ones bark, which ones only follow you to the edge of their yard and then stop. You know that the road to the market in Lviv takes 3 days in good weather and 5 in bad, and that in Lviv there is a market with cloth from places you cannot name, cloth that is not linen and not wool. Cloth that has colours, your mother says, cost more than the house. You know that girls from good families marry by 17, and that 15 is not too early to start knowing what not cruel means. You do not know what an Ottoman is. There is a version of you that lives entirely in Church Slavonic. You learned it before you learned to spin wool, which your mother calls a failure of priorities, and your father calls inevitable, given that he taught it to you by letting you hold the pages while he read. The language is not the language anyone speaks. It is the language of the icons and the incense and the particular quality of light that comes through the window on the south side of the nave in the afternoon. The light that falls across the iconostasis at an angle that makes the gold leaf look like it is moving. You know the Psalter by memory. Not all of it, enough of it. The Psalms for mourning and the Psalms for gratitude and the Psalms for the mornings when you do not know what you feel and you need someone else's words for it. Your father says this is what the Psalter is for. Your mother says the Psalter is for Sunday and for funerals, and that on other days there is work to do. The icon of the Mother of God hangs in the first room above the table. It is old enough that the paint has darkened, and the gold of the halo has worn thin in the places where your father touches it. He touches it every morning before he eats, a single press of 2 fingers to the lower right corner, not the face but the edge, as if he does not want to wear her away. You have watched this every morning of your life, and you have never asked him why the corner specifically. You think you know. The corner is the part of the icon that is most clearly just paint and wood. The face is something else. Your father is precise about the difference. You pray in Church Slavonic when you are praying formally, and in Ruthenian when you are praying privately, and sometimes in Latin because your father taught you the liturgy in all 3, and you are not always sure which language God prefers. Your father says God hears the intention, not the grammar. Your mother says this is why your father had to become a priest rather than a scholar, because scholars care about the grammar. The church is colder than the house in winter, and in spring it smells of beeswax and old wood and the incense that never fully leaves the walls. You have sat in this smell every Sunday of your life. You will not know, later, that you are carrying it with you the way you carry the language, somewhere in the body where things go when they are no longer accessible, but not yet gone. The bucket your father mended last autumn has a piece of wire where the handle used to be. The wire is not comfortable to carry when the bucket is full. You have thought about this wire many times on the walk back from the well, the way the weight of the water pulls it into your palm, and you have thought about asking your father to find a different piece of wire, something with more give to it, and you have not asked because the bucket works, and there is always something more necessary to talk about. This is the texture of an ordinary morning. The wire, the 43 steps, the sky. You know the smell of rain before it comes. You know how to tell which clouds carry water and which ones are travelling through without stopping. You know that in Rohatyn, the rains come from the northwest, and that when the air smells of the river and of something green underneath the river smell, it will rain by afternoon. You know the sound the mud makes when it is the right consistency for your mother to make the repair to the corner of the house that has needed repairing since autumn. You know the sound the mud makes when it is too wet. You know things that do not have names because they do not need names. They are just the texture of being here, the particular quality of here as opposed to anywhere else. And you have never had reason to think about anywhere else as somewhere you might actually go. Lviv is 3 days away and you have been once, with your father, when you were 9, to see the bishop. You remember the smell of the city before you saw it, the smell of animals and people and something burning and something cooking, all of it arriving before the rooftops. You remember that the cathedral had a floor made of stone, and that the stone was not one colour but many colours fitted together like a pattern. And you knelt on it during the service and felt the cold of it through your dress and thought about the hands that had fitted those pieces of stone together and where those hands were now. You were 9. You were already that kind of child. Your mother says you think too much about the wrong things. She says this without cruelty, as a description rather than a judgment, the way she describes weather. Your father says nothing when she says this. His silences have different weights. That one is the weight of disagreement he has decided not to voice, the weight of a man who has his own opinion about what the wrong things are. There are raids. Everyone knows there are raids. The Tatars come sometimes from the east, from the steppe beyond the mountains, and they take cattle, and sometimes horses and sometimes people. The last raid in Rohatyn was 7 years ago when you were 8. They took the miller's son and 2 horses from the farm at the edge of town. You were inside the house when it happened. Your mother put her hand over your mouth and told you to count the icons on the wall until it was quiet outside. You counted to 47. Then it was quiet. You have thought about that number sometimes since then. 47. The specific number of seconds between the world you knew and the world that continued without the miller's son. Not 46, not 48. You do not know the miller's son's name. He was older than you, perhaps 12 when they took him, and you had seen him at the market and by the mill and in the churchyard on Sundays, but you had never spoken to him. After he was gone, the family lit candles for him at St. Nicholas for a year, and then they stopped. And you do not know whether that means they stopped hoping or whether they found some way to live with not knowing. The raid was 7 years ago and Rohatyn has not been raided since. This has allowed the town to settle into a particular understanding of raids, which is that they are real and distant at the same time. Real the way lightning is real. A thing that happens. A thing that happened. A thing that could, in theory, happen again, but that lives in a different part of your mind than the wire on the bucket, and the 43 steps and the sky over Rohatyn in early April. Your mother has a system. She has explained it once and only once, the way she explains everything that she considers too important to need repeating. If you hear horses that are not from this valley, if you hear more horses than there should be, if the dogs begin and then stop, you go to the second room. You lie under the bed, you put your face against the floor, and you count the icons in your memory, and you do not come out until your father's voice tells you it is safe. You have practiced this in your mind. It takes you approximately 45 counts to get through all 3 icons in sufficient detail. You have not needed to do it since you were 8. The mud has dried and you are walking to the well with the bucket. The wire presses into your palm. The sky is pale blue. In the field past the fence, someone has turned the earth recently, and it smells the way turned earth smells in spring. Green underneath and dark underneath that. The smell of things that have been under the cold all winter and are now open to air. You are thinking about the arrangement in Drohobych, not cruelly, just precisely. The way you think about the icons on the wall during the count. Carefully, taking inventory. A miller's son is not a priest's son, but a miller is not nothing. A mill is a fixed thing, attached to a river, which means the river is your river for the rest of your life, and the 43 steps are replaced by other steps you will eventually know just as well. You are trying to decide whether the sameness of it is a comfort or something else that has no name yet in the languages you know. You fill the bucket. You walk back. Your mother scolds you for taking too long. You eat bread with the last of the winter cheese, hard at the edges and sharp in the middle, the way cheese is when it is very good or very old or both. Your brother asks you to help him with the psalm verse he has memorized wrong for 3 days. You correct him. He argues. You show him the text. He looks at it for a long time and then admits, "You are right," with the expression of a person conceding something much larger than a psalm verse. You will remember this. Not because you know it is the last ordinary morning, because you do not know that. You will remember it, because later, when you are trying to find the last ordinary moment, the last moment before the world changed without asking, you will go back through the mornings, and this is the one you will return to. The bread, the cheese, the psalm your brother finally got right. Outside, somewhere to the east, in a direction you cannot name, and toward which you have never had reason to look, 1,200 Tatar cavalry are moving through the Carpathian passes at a pace that will bring them to this valley before the week is out. You do not know this. You know your brother can now recite the verse correctly. You know the cheese was very good. You know the sky this morning was the pale blue of early April, the blue that comes before the leaves, the blue above Rohatyn, that is the same blue above everywhere, and that you have always assumed will simply continue to be there, above you, wherever here is. The afternoon comes. Your mother finds something for your hands to do. Your father reads. Mikola falls asleep before dark the way he always does, like a candle going out, all at once. You lie in the second room listening for the river. It is the frogs, probably, but possibly the water. Then, very far away, in the direction you cannot name, past the edge of what you know, and into the part of the map that is simply not Rohatyn, you hear something that is not frogs and not water. You count. 1, 2. The sound gets closer. 3,